Okay, well, good evening, everybody. And I think the first thing on this annual general meeting on the agenda is to apologies for absence. I know there are quite a few, and as is normal, we tend to take them en masse, and Ali will then put them on the minutes. So if we can take that as a given. Because there are quite a few names. Moving on to item 2, which is to approve the minutes of the annual general meeting held last October. It's quite interesting reading the minutes to see that we actually held them in Danny's Cafe in Worcester because of the builders. This year, we're doing it via Zoom. I look forward to next year's AGM to see where we're doing it from. But could we, for those who were there, could we approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I will. So I will duly sign those as a true reflection of the meeting last year, and I'll pass them to Ali. So it's the next item on the agenda is to receive the chairman's report. This is very strange to welcome you all via Zoom. It's probably the first in St. Richard's 38-year-old history that we've actually done a Zoom meeting for an AGM. But I do ask for your patience as we go through the formalities of holding an annual general meeting. The pandemic has brought with it many challenges to everyone, both in their daily lives and their social and work. During the 38 years, as I said, that St. Richard's has been in existence, we faced many challenges, and the staff that we have probably, without exception, faced probably the worst problems in the last 8 months. And it's been very, very trying times for everybody involved at the hospice. I suppose when I sometimes stop and I think what's seen us through, because we are getting through it, and what's seen us through is actually people, and I repeat it 3 times, 4 times. And those are the staff, the volunteers, the supporters, the governors, the patrons, and other partners that Nikki and Debbie are working with here in Worcestershire. I know that they appreciate us. I hear it every day, and you're doing a sterling job. And as I say, it's people. You'll be hearing from others in a minute what they faced and how they face those problems of the pandemic. But it really has been a truly remarkable effort from all of you, and many, many thanks, and I wish that to be recorded. There have been innovative ways of fundraising and working within our shops, arranging for discussions with patients via video, and their, our clients and their families, etc. The IPU has worked extremely well with difficult ways of accepting patients and visitors into it. But bless you all for what you've done. And it's been surrounded by a lot of builders on site as well, who have tried to work around and cause as little disruption as possible. So it's been an extremely difficult 8 months. And that's what I would like to say, is to thank everybody. And you'll be hearing more about that in a minute. So well done to everyone. Before I hand over, I just wanted to mention my position. It's now 16 years since I became a governor, and I was invited actually by Jeannie Young. What an inspiration, absolutely remarkable. With her enthusiasm, it was infectious, and also her persuasiveness, I suppose, from to ask me to take on the chair. We'll miss her terribly. But bless her, she's got one huge thing to say for us all to say thank you for, and that's that building that we're all living in, or a lot of people are living in. It's 14 years since I was appointed as chairman of St. Richard's, and during that time, much has changed. I remember 14, more than that, probably 20 years, Barney Price and I measuring out a field, and me having to mow the grass to put a marquee up on Wildwood Drive, where the dream started to become a reality. I feel now is the time to pass the baton on to the next chair after 14 years. I think it'll be refreshing. I believe we are but custodians of this wonderful organization, and I'm so pleased to be able to announce that the board at St. Richard's has fully endorsed the proposal that Jenny Kaup should become chair in March 2021. Jenny's been a member of the board for many years and very supportive vice chair to me. With your support and Jenny's energy and enthusiasm, I know St. Richard's will be in safe hands. During my time in the chair, I found it not only a privileged role, but during my time in post, we've achieved a huge amount. You note I said we because I strongly believe that we are a team. I mean, there's that thing, there's no I in we, but we're a tremendous bunch of people. So we are a team. I am confident that as I step down over the next few months and Jenny picks up the reins, that you will give her the same support that you have given me over the 14 years. Somebody said to me the other day, sum up the last 14 years. I suppose I'd say we were thoughtful. We certainly had the expertise. One of the things that I can remember Nikki, when she joined us, was flabbergasted because we're also decisive. We make decisions, we move on to the next thing, and we are decisive because we have the expertise surrounding us. But you know what? Most importantly, we enjoyed it. So Jenny will be taking over. I will be by her side. She can learn or disregard or do whatever, but the baton is being passed and we move forward. So what I'd like to do is say thank you. Jenny, I'm not sure whether you want to say a word or two, whether you can say a word or two, but welcome to your new position. Are you muted, Jenny?
Yes, I've just unmuted myself, John. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I just wanted to say this evening, not only a big thank you to John, but also what an honour it is to be invited to chair St. Richard's. Of course, we all know, and has just been illustrated, that it'll be very difficult to follow John, who's been an outstanding chair for so many years. But I will seek to build confidently on his great legacy, to develop and expand both our community services and those which we deliver at Wildwood Drive. So I'm really looking forward to working with all our amazing patrons, members, friends, and our wonderful staff and volunteers. There will be challenges, we know that, and when aren't there? But we have a great team, as John said, at St. Richard's, and I can promise you that I'll be there to support you all. So thank you, John.
Pleasure. I will now pass over. Sorry, Richard. Richard, you're muted.
Yeah, not now. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Right.
Treasurer's report.
Yeah, Treasurer's report for the financial year ended 31st of March 2020. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have much pleasure in reporting a further successful financial year, with a net increase in our funds of £598,000, making a total funds in the balance sheet of 16 million. Despite around a 3.7% decrease in income to 9.98 million, our expenditure on charitable activities actually increased by 4.5% to over 6 million. Our overall activities generated a net cash inflow of over £1 million for the year. Of this, we actually invested 1.8 million in capital fixed assets, with 1.7 million of that on the building extensions and the balance on equipment. So because of that, our cash at bank at the year end was reduced to 1.6 million from 2.2 million. Overall, the net income over expenditure was £755,000. And after investment losses of £157,000, we had an increase in funds, as I said earlier, of £598,000. The investments have to be revalued at the balance sheet date, and due to the impact of COVID-19 on the markets at this date, of course, all stocks were marked down severely. Fortunately, there has been some recovery since. So we have a balance sheet which shows a very strong financial position with fixed assets of 14 million and working capital of 2 million, making up the 16 million. The unrestricted reserves, which are the freely available general reserves for our charitable purposes, were 5.1 million. These reserves exceeded our policy by 1.5 million, but the excess is being held to fund our strategy for 2020-23 and, of course, towards the Build 2020 project. These sound financial results are testimony in reflecting the superb efforts of governors, senior management staff, volunteers and supporters, and thereby placing the hospice to meet the challenges in providing its wonderful care and support throughout our community. I must also thank the finance team led by Dan Hay for its professional management of the finances, and of our auditor Crow UK LLP for its audit and very helpful management report. This year's audit being conducted remotely and very successfully. Currently, the principal risk and uncertainty for the hospice arising from COVID-19 pandemic is, of course, its severe impact on revenue from both fundraising and trading. Additional finance has been received from the Herefordshire and Worcestershire CCG, central government, in addition to funding for our shops. This funding, along with close control of our costs and monitoring of forecasts, which is done on a regular basis, enables us to steer our way through these extremely difficult times. I therefore commend the report of the governors and consolidated financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 2020 to members for their approval. That ends my report, and I now hand over to June Patel for the Chief of. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely that you're able to attend our AGM this evening. And thank you so much for coming. And it's so lovely to see your faces on screen. It's a real pleasure to see how many people are here this evening at our AGM. I just want to say, please take a little time to look at our annual reports. It was enclosed in the link that Ali Grout sent to you, or it's also available on our website, because it really celebrates in both words and pictures our many achievements over the last year. Caring for life continues to be the constant theme that shapes our strategic thinking to continually improve care for patients and their loved ones. This ambition became even more important due to the onset of COVID-19 from January 2020 and subsequent national restrictions imposed on all of us from the 23rd of March. You will hear more about our clinical response to the pandemic in the reports presented this evening and the ways in which our clinical teams virtually overnight transformed clinical services. Their innovative approach enabled the continuing of safe care to patients in our inpatient units and created virtual solutions to support patients and their loved ones in their own homes. I'm so proud of all their achievements and their ongoing passion and commitment to support patients and their loved ones. They're truly amazing. One of our strategic goals in 2019 was to develop our digital vision and IT infrastructure. The successful implementation of our vision by our creative IT team has enabled us to maintain the full scope of business continuity across all clinical and non-clinical departments during the pandemic. And I would like to convey a special thanks to our IT team for enabling us to do that. The daily contribution of our creative and dedicated Council of Governors, senior management team, heads of departments, facilities team, HR team, education and communications team, and all of our staff and volunteers should not be underestimated. They are truly inspirational every day. The total income for the St Richard's Group is 10 million, most of which is secured by the generosity of the public and a revenue income derived from our shops. 20% of our income was provided by the NHS. In terms of sustaining our income in the future, we continue to be very dependent on the generosity of our supporters and are extremely grateful for their ongoing support and regular donations. Our fundraising and commercial teams are working tirelessly to develop ways in which revenue income can be sustained in the future. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in both teams for their innovative and creative thinking. St Richard's is a key partner in the health and social care system in Worcestershire. Throughout the pandemic, strong clinical networks have been forged, and it's only by working together as part of a system that we can truly create the best possible care for patients and their loved ones. As the chairman's already mentioned, we anticipate challenging times ahead in 2021 from both a financial and a clinical perspective, as uncertainties associated with the pandemic continue. However, I'm confident that the Council of Governors, senior management team, our staff and volunteers will continue to work together to seek solutions to the many challenges that lay ahead for us. We continue to build on the ambition and pioneering vision established by the early founders of St Richard's Hospice. Caring for life and the symbolism of the snowdrop bringing consolation and the absence of bright days remains close to our hearts and has provided such inspiration and hope during the pandemic, and we look forward to brighter days ahead. During these uncertain times, please be assured that we will continue to be here to provide support and care for patients and their loved ones during very, very emotional and distressing times. So in conclusion, thank you so much for listening. Please take care and keep safe and well as we move into the winter months. And now I'm going to hand over to Dr. Nikki Wilderspin to share with you her report.
Thank you, June. Sorry, it took a moment to unmute myself. Good evening, everybody. It's so lovely to see you. Thank you for coming to our AGM. My report for 2019 and 20, as you would probably expect, falls into two parts really, due to the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, which has impacted all of us since March, but really only came into the end of this reporting year. So in the first 11 months of this last year, our medical team of specialty doctors continued their usual work alongside the multidisciplinary teams across the hospice, in particular in the inpatient unit and in the Living Well services, continuing to support the holistic needs of our patients and families. I'd like to record my gratitude to consultants and specialists who continue to work in partnership with us to help us provide this care, to provide both the palliative medicine needs, but also some specialist medical needs as well. So in particular, the physicians from the Acute Trust who have expertise in caring for particular aspects of our patients' needs, such as heart failure, chronic lung problems, renal failure and Parkinson's disease. And they contribute their expertise to our Living Well multidisciplinary clinics. And over this last year, our hospice-based specialty doctors have led a number of developments. I'd like to mention Dr. Sarah Onions in her role as medical quality lead, who has enhanced our audit and evaluation programme and supported the development of a number of clinical guidelines which continue to improve the safety and quality of care for our patients. And as part of this work, working alongside Tracy Grint, our care quality lead, Sarah established a regular clinical development group, which enabled us to have a forum to bring together different members of the hospice team to work on key developments. One very productive example was the development of specialised diets for our patients, particularly on the inpatient unit, where we needed representatives from across the hospice, doctors, nurses, hospitality team, and our chef as well, all sat round the table to develop those particular diets which have really revolutionised the offer that we can give to our patients to make sure they receive the nutrition that they need. And Sarah and Tracy have also led on another new innovation this year, which is the introduction of hospice mortality reviews. Now, this is the process of reviewing the care provided to patients who spend their last days with us. And we had to translate this process from a national Learning from Deaths initiative that was required by our commissioners, part of a national process, due to concerns about excess deaths in hospitals, so therefore mandated by our commissioners. Now, thinking it through, it took us a while to work out how we would best apply the principles of mortality review, where the aim is to prevent death, given that as a hospice, many people choose to spend their last days with us. So we've actually found that sitting down and reviewing the care of those people who have spent their last days with us as leaders of the multidisciplinary teams has actually been a great opportunity. It's been beneficial, as there are always lessons to be learned and areas where we can improve. So if you see mortality reviews in our reports and it seems strange, that's the origin of it. I'd like to mention another of our specialty doctors, Dr. Becky Watson, who alongside her medical skills is an accomplished pianist. And when she plays on the piano in the ward, it is truly therapeutic. Some of you may have heard her give recitals in support of the hospice. It was wonderful to learn that the piano that we have at St Richard's was donated by Jeannie Young, who we've honoured tonight, and the piano belonged to her father. So it will continue to be a treasured part of hospice history. And this last year, I'm delighted to say that Becky was successful in her application to study postgraduate piano performance at the Birmingham Conservatoire, and she's going to do that alongside her medical work. Now, we're privileged to be a training unit, and during the last year, we continued to provide a lot of palliative medicine and hospice medicine experience to a whole range of professionals, usually with really excellent evaluations of their placements. And the junior doctors that come to the hospice on rotation include doctors in training who will become the palliative medicine consultants of the future, as well as future doctors in all specialties who will go away with an understanding of hospice care, and also the GPs of the future who will hopefully be equipped to meet the palliative care needs of their patients in the future. So continuing with an educational theme, I'm delighted to say that Project Echo, which is our telementoring project in partnership with Hospice UK, became really well established during the reporting year and also became fundamentally important to our COVID-19 response. And this really provides the bridge in my report to the last month of this reporting year, March 2020, when we started, as everybody else did, to feel the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, ECHO stands for the Extension of Community Health Outcomes, and it enables general healthcare staff to be equipped with specialist knowledge that they can use in their day-to-day roles. And this was established by the fact that we had a new IT infrastructure and a generous grant. And we launched the project in the reporting year successfully with NHS community partners, so that last year 32 community nurses from 15 neighbourhood teams attended at least one of 18 ECHO telementoring sessions. Now, these were remotely delivered by Zoom, which is something that's clearly become familiar to us, but was cutting edge at the time. So when the pandemic started to impact us in March, we were ready to adapt and respond really quickly, because Project Echo meant we already had a Zoom license and were familiar with it and could very, very quickly enable our clinical teams to meet online. So several Zoom licenses later, much of our clinical and non-clinical work and this AGM is facilitated remotely. And essentially, as you will hear more from Debbie, our staff rapidly turned the hospice, the language we've been using is inside out, to ensure that our patients continued to receive support in the safest ways possible, despite the impact of the pandemic. Because we were so acutely aware that St Richard's patients comprise some of the most vulnerable to the coronavirus. So it was a sober and emotional moment for all of us who were in the room on the 16th of March, when we concluded that we could no longer put our patients at risk by bringing them into the Living Well Centre, taking the decision to cancel clinics, therapeutic days and groups on site, and then challenging our staff to continue to support people virtually by phone and video. When the Prime Minister announced the first lockdown restrictions later that day, we were really pleased that we'd already taken this decision on behalf of the welfare of St Richard's patients for ourselves. So the unfolding story of our response to the COVID-19 pandemic will inform our reports for next year. And ECHO's been a key approach to supporting our partners through this, and we'll be able to tell you a lot about, particularly how we've supported staff in care homes across the county. So my reports for the pandemic will be much more detailed for next year's AGM, but I would at this point like to record my thanks to the medical team for their willingness to step up in response to the challenges posed by very different ways of working. I'd also like to thank our staff and volunteers for their incredible flexibility and resilience in continuing to offer hospice services to our patients and families through such challenging times. Debbie Westwood, our care director, has provided the leadership our clinical teams have needed during these challenging times. And it's with great pleasure that I now hand over the baton to Debbie for her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As I sit here and reflect on the first 18 months in post as care director, it's challenging for me to project my mind back to the achievements of the clinical teams pre-COVID, because that's what my report to the AGM should contain. However, because so much has changed in a very short space of time and our hospice world now looks so very different, I will make reference to both what we did in the early months of this year and what we have achieved since. Prior to the pandemic, there was so much good work happening, with staff working around phase 2 of the build project and planning for what they could deliver in the future by engaging staff, patients, and our supporters in developing our future clinical strategy. The Living Well Centre, newly refurbished, had become a thriving hub of activity, welcoming patients for a revitalised programme of care, providing opportunities for patients and carers to set their own goals, learn how to cope with illness, partake in social groups, and be supported by a multidisciplinary team to manage complex symptoms. Then in early March, as Nikki alluded to, I remember sitting with our head of Living Well after viewing a group of patients who were happily engaged in a Tai Chi session and having to convey the decision that this would be the last group who we could support face to face safely within the building. We both shed a tear when facing the enormity of what would be lost for those people we support. But I should have at that moment been more optimistic, because no sooner had the news been broken to the staff, the head of Living Well rallied the team to undertake the most extraordinary transformation of her services. Together, they turned the centre, as Nikki said, inside out, creating an incredible digital space for our patients to be supported. Complemented by regular phone calls, the team has provided online teaching, social groups, therapeutic interactions, and multidisciplinary support. They ensured that patients who were unable to access us digitally weren't disadvantaged, and deployed a volunteer to support families at every step of the way to make sure that they could get their tech in order. I'm proud to say that whilst a number of hospices across the county shut down their Living Well and day services completely, they turned to us recently to learn how to revitalise and restore their services online, as our transition to online services was almost seamless. This is in part thanks to our head of IT and his team, who, as June noted, redesigned our IT infrastructure. Pre-COVID, the community teams, under the lead of a new head of department, were reviewing their services and looking at ways in which we could develop our already close working relationships with the neighbourhood teams provided by the NHS, and were admirably coping with more referrals than in the previous last 2 years. When rising virus cases in the community meant that we had to review all our processes and reduce footfall into patients' homes, senior nurses in the community team and our hospice at home team moved fast to redesign the service to provide a 24-hour rapid response service to ensure that we could support anyone in need, whether they were affected by COVID or not. There were anxious times when the supply of PPE was reduced to a trickle, but the team continued to virtually support those most in need and reinstated face-to-face visiting as soon as adequate PPE was available. Pre-COVID, the family support team was providing education and support and training, not only for our own staff, but for students and clinicians across the Midlands. During March, they responded rapidly to develop training for schools and other voluntary sector agencies on how to support those bereaved by COVID, and became a recognised shining light in the health economy, supporting bereaved families, but also those who were caring for people to support them. The inpatient unit, under the new leadership from November 2019, were reviewing their environment. They were reviewing care planning and looking at the workforce that we needed to pave the way to a bright future. COVID hit, and the team, under the combined leadership of our care quality lead, in whom we are blessed, and our inpatient unit manager, completely redesigned how we provided care to manage the delicate balance between our public duty to uphold the new guidance and provide compassionate care safely. Our staff bravely continued to provide hands-on and face-to-face care at a time when we knew very little about the real risks of the virus, and when they had seen an NHS colleague locally who they knew die from the infection. And it can't be underestimated how well that they just kept going. Our volunteers are much loved and appreciated, and they provide an eclectic vibrancy to our clinical services with a myriad of skills. And I know that this has been devastating for those volunteers who have had to stop giving their support through this time. My heart broke once again when we had to severely limit the number of volunteers in order to protect patients, the volunteers themselves, and our staff. However, those volunteers who have been able to continue have been wonderful, like the IT savvy volunteer I mentioned earlier, and the reception volunteer that drives across the Midlands to pick up vital supplies of personal protective equipment for our staff to use and continue to care. To those in the community support volunteers who have delivered vital supplies for those isolating, and also deliver exceptional treats like the afternoon tea provided from the St. Richard's Kitchen team to help a gentleman who was completely alone on his 80th birthday. External volunteers have also rallied to sew scrubs, make masks and visors, and provide tokens of comfort for families parted due to government restrictions. And some have also provided food for our staff. I thank our clinical teams from the bottom of my heart for their tenacity, creativity, and sheer bravery to continue to provide care despite immense hurdles that one small virus has thrown in our path. I've witnessed staff who have been reduced to tears because they were no longer able to embrace people in our St. Richard's care in the way that we used to. The moral injury that clinical teams have endured from this will no doubt be long lasting. But despite this, they have adapted, innovated, and changed to provide the best care that they possibly can within the constraints. And for that, I commend them. I also want to publicly thank Tracy Grint, our care quality lead, for her phenomenal support, going above and beyond at every juncture, not only to support the clinical teams, but me personally during some very long days and weeks without rest or respite. Also to my colleagues on the senior management team and Nikki's guidance and support, you've been invaluable. One thing is for certain, that whilst we cannot predict what the world will bring in the next 12 months, St. Richard's core values of care, compassion, commitment and professionalism have been strengthened and upheld by the clinical teams during this time and will continue to provide us the launchpad from which we propel into our bright future. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Debbie. Danny. Mr. Corns. You there, Danny?
I am. Something wrong with the mute, but oh.
There we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to report on the trading activities for the financial year 2019-20. The first 6 months of trading started off reasonably well, with 30% of our shops turning over a higher income than the previous year. As we moved into the second half of the year, we saw this increase to 50% of our shops. Unfortunately, March took us to a place we have never been before, recording a deficit and 0 shops performed better than the previous year. 6 months of this year, we had achieved a surplus over budget and we were looking to perform the best that we had ever done. The impact of COVID-19 on our shops caused our shops to close in March, without doubt had an impact. However, due to having a strong trading year up until that point, we still managed to create a surplus of £731,547, an increase of 4.4% on the previous year. These figures are taken from the management accounts and before intercompany adjustments for costs necessary for the completion of statutory accounts. We continue to receive great support and commitment from our volunteers, and they are paramount to the success of our department. I would also like to recognise at this point the great work that our shop managers and support staff give to the department and the professionalism for trading within our stores. I would also like to recognise further the support given by all the staff that were involved in having to close our business down. And I strongly appreciate the uncertainties that they were and continue to face. I personally would like to thank the support given to me by my fellow SMT members, the Board of Governors, the Trading Board Directors, and all staff who perform such wonderful work and provide great support to us all. I look forward to seeing you all in person, hopefully at the next, at the next board AGM, hopefully in person. However, I'm well aware I might be more hesitant to report the financial success after a year of trading following COVID pandemic. Rest assured, we will do our best as we always endeavour to do. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Can everybody see me? Fantastic. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My focus will be on last financial year because that is the accounts to which we're referring. But like everybody else, I will have to mention the last 6 months. So the financial year 2019-20 provided many challenges for fundraising. We were in an economic challenging climate, or so we thought. And actually, if we look back in context of the last 6 months, it wasn't, in fact, that challenging. We were also in an environment where existing and many emerging charities in our community were fighting for the donor pound, and this is something that is increasing in our community. We also faced the challenge of increasing regulation as the sector continues to come under scrutiny of its fundraising practices. But the latter we welcome because we pride ourselves on our professionalism and our high standards. So attracting voluntary income to sustain hospice contributions to the health and well-being of individuals in Worcestershire is becoming increasingly essential. And St Richard's cannot do that without the ongoing support from the community it serves. And the involvement of many, whether they be individuals, groups, clubs, schools, churches, local businesses, or trust and grant-making organisations, we're indebted to them all and grateful to them. The increase in our income from gifts in wills over recent years has been significant, and its necessity to help us provide our core services is worthy of note. And we're grateful to everyone in our community who leaves a gift for St Richard's, and we're working hard to ensure we remain a charity of choice for those bequests. We recently introduced a free online will writing service through Bequeath to encourage those gifts in wills. This income from legacies is crucial for our survival and will help us continue to deliver our specialist palliative care and vision. And the regular gifts we receive are also important as they provide that sustainable, predictable income. And we're also working really hard on this aspect of our income generation. In 2018, we embarked on the 5.3 million Build 2020 appeal, and that picked up a pace in the 19-20 financial year. And thanks are expressed to those trust and grants organisations and to those individuals that committed and pledged to help us. Their generosity was outstanding, with some significantly large donations being received from individuals and trusts. And with this incredible and ongoing support of our amazing community, we actually reached our Build 2020 target ahead of plan during last financial year. And thank goodness that happened. Now we look back at where we might have been had that not been achieved. And the work of Julia Wolfe in researching and securing the trust funding has been significant in that success. And we're grateful to Julia for her professionalism and expertise in that area. To run a large-scale appeal and to maintain the revenue position last year is an achievement worthy of note. And I'd like to express my thanks to the amazing fundraising team who've worked hard to achieve this. And I also acknowledge the contributions of the communications team who are significant in that appeal process under Helen Griffiths' leadership, and we thank them. Diversity in income generation has always been important for St Richard's and is very much so at the moment. And we continually review income streams and try to react accordingly to trends in the economic environment. And in recent years, we'd actually worked hard on data and digital strategies and on digital solutions for fundraising. And this is an arena which we were quite innovative and forward-thinking, and has paid dividends during the COVID crisis. And we thank our governors for investing in the IT structures that have allowed us to do that. So the impact of COVID on the start of this financial year was immediate and significant, with event cancellations, the inability to host supporters at corporate events and at Wildwood, and to engage with them in all our usual ways, along with the impact of COVID on investments for our trust and grant organisations and corporate supporters, meant we had to react really quickly. We've brought forward our digital strategies. We've learned really quickly. We've introduced virtual events into our fundraising calendar. We sat down in June and had no idea what that looked like. So we set ourselves an ambitious target of just trying our best to raise £10,000 a month. And since June, in the 4 months with that strategy, we've doubled that income. So we're delighted with the results. Our initial focus was on a resilience appeal, which we launched early. And the income that achieved gave us a cushion and an initial boost to help us through the tougher summer months when all our events were cancelled. And those campaigns with the second raffle and our postcard appeal and other mailings that we've achieved gave us a net income of £305,000 over the summer months. It still didn't make up overall for our losses, but we've achieved a lot. And the last 6 months have, without doubt, been the most challenging for fundraising, certainly in the 20 years that I've served, seeing a 40.3% shortfall at the end of August. The good news is we feel pretty confident that'll be a lot lower at the end of this month. And in the context of this, and the context of the fact that the fundraisers were furloughed at the beginning, it would be remiss of me not to mention again their dedication. They continually strive for perfection and results and have proved their resilience and dedication to the hospice in the most difficult of times. Their contributions, their ability plays a significant role in the hospice's continued financial success, and I'm indebted to them. We know there are significant challenges ahead, as Dan's just mentioned. I hope I'm reporting as positively this time next year. But we don't have crystal balls and things are really uncertain. What I do know is we have the most amazing donors and supporters, and we'll work with them to secure our future and to ensure we remain an essential and integral part of the health economy in Worcestershire. And thank you, and I think I'm handing back to John.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Tricia. Before we carry on to appoint the auditors, could I just say one thing? Firstly, thank you to June and Nikki and Debbie and Danny and also Tricia. What a team. That's what makes us so successful in these trying times. And as I said earlier on in my report, it's all to do with people, people, people. And that was the theme through all of your reports. We have a tremendous team, but there are also tremendous people out there in the community who help us as volunteers, help us with funding, help us in so many ways. And why do they do it? They do it because they appreciate the work that June and her senior management team do. So thank you all. What I would suggest now is moving on, rather than taking questions now, if there are any, we'll just go through the last few formalities of the AGM. And item 10 is to appoint the auditors for the ensuing year. Not being an accountant, I actually have been involved with the Crow and Crow's reporting. I can honestly say I am so thrilled to have them as auditors, because they are so investigative in our accounts, which to me is wonderful news, because we read of many charities that struggle because they're not audited correctly, that their accounts are not put forward properly. Crow went all over our accounts, and it's a credit to our finance department that they did find one or two little things, but then that's what they're paid to do. But I have absolutely 100% confidence in proposing them as our auditors for the ensuing years. Is everybody happy with that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I just move on to item 11 very rapidly? During the year, we said goodbye to Professor Tema Thompson, Anita Hobday, and Brenda Sheridan. They stood down as governors. They had served us so well, Brenda for many, many years. And we say thank you for their contribution. During the year, we've appointed 2 new members, and we welcome David Annitz and James Rankin. Very fortunate to have their expertise, knowledge, and professionalism on our board, and welcome to those 2 gentlemen. And also that under our rules of re-election, Andrea Palmer, Hannah Edwards, and Galen Bartholomew are up for re-election, and they have agreed to be put forward for re-election. Could I take A, B, C, and also D, which is Councillor Andy Roberts? We do have a member of Worcester City Council on our board, and it gets nominated by the council, and that is Andy Roberts, who has served on our board for a few years now, but also prior to that was also a volunteer. And could I take all of item 11 as a proposal?
Yes.
Fine, thank you very much indeed. We now move on to any other business, and I don't know quite, I'll look at Ali here, how you're going to play this, but because so many people are muted, if anybody has any questions to ask of the senior management team, then how they notify or show that they wish to ask a question, or if anybody wishes to make a comment, please could you try and do it by either unmuting yourself, if that's a medical term, or by putting your hand in the air. Does anybody have anything to say or any questions? Sounds wonderful. It looks as though we've reached the end of our AGM. Oh, Mark, is that you with the thumb in the air? You're muted, I think, Mark.
Definite thumb in the air, John. Well done, everybody. And here's to the usual AGM afterwards.
Oh, well, there you are. I hope
Like your style, Mark.
hopefully you will be able to see the new build at the next AGM.
This is following on from the virtual wine tasting on Saturday, Tricia.
Well, coffee for me. Anyway, many thanks, everybody, and travel safely through your wonderful time. And, you know, I just hope that we come through this and we are in a very strong position. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Oh, sorry, I've gone onto a Zoom screen. All I'm saying is we're in a very strong position in this year. We will get through this because it's, as I said, people, people, people. So God bless you all, and see you soon. Bye.